Hello and welcome to United Against Hunger, an event organised by the Right to Food UK Commission, and thanks to Arise, a Festival Ideas and the Trade Union Coordinating Group for their support in putting this important discussion on this evening. You can support Arise using the link in the chat. I'm Sarah Woolley, I'm the General Secretary of the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union, and I'll be chairing the event tonight. I also sit as a vice chair along with Ian Byrne on the commission. I'm sure I don't have to convince anyone in this audience that food poverty is a blight on British society. Last year, the Trussell Trust alone distributed 1.8 million, yes, 1.8 million emergency food parcels, and this doesn't even take into account all the work of the independent and non-affiliated food banks that we know goes on every day of the week. Practically in every town and city in the country, we find significant numbers of people who are struggling to feed themselves and their families, and food banks are now being accepted as a normal part of everyday life in one of the richest countries in the world. Significantly for tonight, we know that nearly a third of food bank users are from households with at least one age-earning worker whose wages don't stretch far enough to put food on the table. So hunger is definitely a trade union issue to the extent that poverty is the effect of endemic low pay, casualisation and zero-hours contracts, and also a culture of bogus self-employment. We know that stronger union and workplace rights are needed to turn the tide. Research undertaken by the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union has shown that in our industry, 6 out of 10 of food workers say that their wages are insufficient for them to meet their basic needs like food and energy, and that they are fearful of running out of food due to a lack of money. Nearly half have said that they are feeling food insecure, and 3 out of 10 reported they don't have enough food to feed themselves and their families. 83% saying they choose to eat cheaper alternatives, which inevitably means that they're eating lower quality, less nutritious food. But although the new Employment Rights Act and scrapping to child limit on universal credit should have some positive impacts, there's clearly still a long way to go before we can make food poverty history. We also need action from the government, which is where the Right to Food Commission comes in. Set up with my good friend and comrade Ian Byrne MP, the driving force of the Right to Food campaign, along with the University of Westminster, the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union, and the Food and Work Network. I'll hand over to Ian shortly to give an overview of what the Commission is and how it's working and what it aims to achieve, before we then hear from a wide range of trade union leaders about why action on this issue is of such importance to the workplaces and communities where their members live and work. But it's not just a matter of listening to the problems. We're also here tonight to talk about how trade unionists can get involved in the work of the Commission, make their voices heard and help deliver the change we need. Whilst tonight is a rally to showcase our work and the importance of the issue, it's only the start of the conversation. And just quickly before I pass over to Ian, I'd just like to go through the format of the rally tonight so people know what to expect. It is a rally format, so that means that we're unlikely to be able to take any questions at the end. But please do feel free to add them into the chat and we'll take them away. If not, between us, answer some of them throughout. So I will move swiftly on and pass straight over to Ian Byrne, MP for West Derby. And yeah, Ian, you're very welcome. Whilst we're just waiting for Ian to do his tech, I'll just talk a bit about how unions can be involved. Just shout when you're ready, Ian. At national levels, we're encouraging unions to submit evidence on the way food poverty manifests and impacts in your sector, but we're also really keen to hear directly from members themselves. So we are encouraging branches.
Can you hear me now, Sarah?
I can, Ian. I'll stop now. I'll pass over to you and I'll continue about members after you've done. Come on,
thanks,
Ian.
mate. Thanks, mate. Thank you. Thanks. Sorry for that. That glitch. I just want to touch on the objectives really of what we're trying to do. So the objective is simple, but urgent, to shine a light on the scandal of food insecurity in obviously one of the richest countries in the world. We should never forget that. To map out the solutions and also to apply real pressure to the governments, both in here in Westminster, but also across the devolved nations, to end hunger for good. That's a big aim, but that is the aim of what we're trying to do. We're not setting up another talking shop. We've done that. We've created a great movement, but now what we want to do is create a roadmap. So the next 6 to 7 months, I'll be creating a roadmap on how to enshrine legal right to food in the UK with a clear mission to end hunger by 2035, half food insecurity by 2030. As I said, very ambitious, but achievable, because as you'll hear today, hunger really is a political choice, and you have the political will, we can tackle it. We formally launched a commission in Parliament in November with trade unionists, academics, everybody connected to what we've been trying to achieve. The idea will be to take the commission around the UK. So we were in Liverpool the beginning of this month, Liverpool and Knowsley, which went extremely well. We're going to Newcastle, Belfast, Glasgow, Cardiff, and then we'll finish in London. Every session, which we have a panel where we're bringing evidence out and drawing evidence out the panel, is preceded by citizens' assembly. Because this work must be rooted in lived experience. The voices of working class communities, families skipping meals, families going hungry, their voices have got to be heard. So they're not an add-on, they're an absolute essential part of the foundation of the Commission. The Commission is examining the scale of food insecurity across every nation and region of the UK. We're looking at malnutrition, public health, issues. We're scrutinising the role of low pay, insecure work, welfare policy, immigration rules as drivers of hunger, and we're exploring what every level of governments, central, devolved, mayoral and local councils can and must do. Crucially, we're asking how we legislate for the right to food that is real, enforceable and transformative. Let me be clear, this is also absolutely a trade union issue, so I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by so many fantastic trade union leaders on this call, because they're the crucial elements of what we're going to try and do here. Because hunger and what we're seeing, a huge part of that is wages, terms and conditions, insecure contracts. It's about social security that doesn't provide security. It's about power and workplace, and in workplaces, and dignity in communities. So for me, the trade union movement always was going to be at the heart of this. Sarah's been a massive driving force in this, and also the support of all the trade union movements. What I will say, I feel, and I've said this at most meetings, I think this is a once in a generation opportunity to begin to end the scourge of hunger in our communities. We've got a Labour government that is now listening to cost of living. They're actually listening to us. I've got a meeting tomorrow with the DWP minister. We're meeting other ministers. Sarah's already met with ministers as well from EFRA. We've now got a real opportunity. If we don't seize this moment, honestly, it's such a missed opportunity. We've got the opportunity to do something really special, I feel, with this commission, and then a roadmap into how we put a right to food into legislation. Because if we don't deliver real meaningful change to working class communities who are struggling at the moment, I genuinely fear we will not be given another mandate when the next election comes. So this is an absolutely pivotal moment, and we must grasp it. So my message to all the trade unions who are watching this: join the campaign, get the unions, trade unions, to submit evidence to the commission, get into your branches, discuss the community survey that we've got on our website, get involved, organise local citizens' assemblies. Our vision, shall I say, is citizens' assemblies right across the country, making sure that what's happening in your community is fed into the commission, so we've got an overall picture of everywhere in the UK, and not just the 6 core places which we're visiting. We'll have a template community guide on how to put them citizens' assemblies together on the website next week. We've got to make sure that everybody's involved in this, making sure the voices are heard, and trade union members are such a magnificent way of making sure this can happen. So tonight, I'm genuinely excited by it, but tonight, this could be the start of making the right to food actually come into reality, and we can ensure that those in our community that are going hungry now, hopefully will look to a brighter future. That's how high these stakes are. And I think this is a really monumental moment in time for us in this campaign. So I'm looking forward to letting all the GSs and trade unionists speak tonight and getting stuck into this campaign. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Ian. And members can get involved directly as well as the unions. You can run branch meetings, get involved with your trades councils, have fringe meetings at your own union's national or regional conferences. There's a whole host of ways that you can get involved, and it doesn't stop once the report's done, because then we need motions to conferences based on the report to put pressure on um, uh, policies and political parties and such as like. Anyway, enough from me. We will move on to our next speaker, who I seem to have spent the whole weekend with in one way or another. It's my good friend Fran Heathcote, the General Secretary of PCS. Fran, it's brilliant to see you again.
Hi, Sarah. Not long since I saw you last, but I want to start off, if it's okay, by congratulating Ian Byrne and our sister union, the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union, for the creation of the Right to Food UK Commission and the work that they've been doing on this issue, because Ian's long been a champion of this cause, even before he entered Parliament. And I know how passionately he cares about this issue. Ian and many other Labour MPs, though, have had to fight their own government against cuts to disability benefits that would have sent hundreds of thousands more people into poverty, and to end the two-child limit, lifting 500,000 children out of poverty. So whilst, like Ian, I welcome the increase in engagement, and that's something that is to be welcomed, there are some issues in our own backyard. We as PCS have been proud to be part of those campaigns, but a Labour government should be fighting with us from the very start on issues of reducing poverty. Despite these victories on the campaign for a right to food, the campaign for a right to food is as necessary as ever, because over the last 10 years, the number of people receiving food parcels from the Trussell Trust food banks has increased from 1 million to 3 million. Last Christmas, over 170,000 were homeless, living in temporary accommodation without a home to call their own. And that is a record number of homeless families, and it has been rising. And unemployment is rising too, up to 1.88 million now, an increase of 330,000 in the last year. And let's remember that 2/3 of all children in poverty live in a family where at least one parent works. Many of our members, civil servants, and those working on central government contracts are finding it really hard to make ends meet. We have tens of thousands of our own members earning just a fraction above the national living wage. And let's remember, these are people directly employed by government who are having to claim universal credit and having enforced uplift every April just to make ends meet and just for the government to stay within the law. A recent survey of our own members found that 1 in 10 is claiming universal credit now to make ends meet, and previous research showed that 1 in 12 of our members had used a food bank in the last year. The combination of rising energy bills, water bills, high housing costs, and low pay is driving more people into poverty, including the government's own workers. Our members work on the front line and they administer a benefit system which they know is inadequate in meeting need. There is a myth in this country that we have a generous benefit system. We do not. The standard allowance of universal credit for a single person is just over £90 a week. And if you're under 25, it's just £72.90 every week. Benefits today are worth less in real terms than they were under Thatcher. Years of cuts and benefit freezes combined with a more punitive system to create more misery and less support. Our members also work in the Home Office, from processing asylum claims to those working at sea, literally rescuing those in small boats at times. And there is another nasty myth that our benefit system attracts people to our shores. That is nonsense. Asylum seekers cannot access our social security system. Instead, those in hotels get £9.95 per person per week if meals are provided, and those in non-catered accommodation get £49.18 or £7 a day. So we need a more humane system for everybody, for people claiming asylum, for people struggling to get by in our benefits system, and for workers struggling to make ends meet, because work is low paid and work is insecure, while living costs continue to soar. Hunger is a trade union issue, and it's an issue on which we all must build campaigns and allies with those claiming benefits and with people in the asylum system. the potential for division, if we don't do that, is huge. And we have the ability, I believe, in this movement to build a really united and coordinated campaign. So we're really pleased to be part of that. That's what PCS is doing, and that's what we will continue to work with people like yourselves to try and build, and we'll make sure that we put every effort into this campaign, because this campaign affects people right across society. Thank you so much for listening, and solidarity to everybody on the call. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Fran. And one of the key themes that we've been talking through the Commission is what to do to support people with no recourse to public funds, because when we talk about universalism, we've got to make sure that it is truly universalism and that people don't drop off the edge because they've not got rights to receive those universal benefits. So thank you for making that point, Fran. Our next speaker is Daniel Kebede, General Secretary of the National Education Union. Thank you so much for coming to join us, Daniel. I appreciate we've dragged you out of important meetings and you've got a lot going on in the union at the minute. So joining us this evening is much appreciated. I will pass over to you.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and thank you very much to you and Ian for being the real driving force behind this commission. Look, I'm a teacher and I'm very proud to lead the National Education Union. Our members care deeply about children and have had to witness, under the Coalition and Conservative government, an exponential rise in child poverty. You know, over 4.5 million children are living in poverty currently in the 5th richest economy in the world. That's, you know, nearly 10 children in a class of 30. And whilst we should absolutely recognise the progress that government's made around the extension of free school meals to all those on receipt of universal credit, whilst we should recognise that, you know, the removal of the 2-child benefit cap was a positive thing, lifting 350,000 children out of deep poverty overnight, we also need to recognise that there is so much more to do. You know, I taught in the Northeast and I taught in London, and whether you are the family of migrant children, migrant parents in, you know, from South America working in the hotels of London, or you are white working class in Wallsend on Tyne, your struggles are joint. They are access to housing, access to food, access to the real basics that allow children to thrive. We have to bear in mind, still 1 million children in this country are living in absolute destitution. That means they do not have enough to have their basic needs met. And actually, we know well enough in education that the number one thing that determines your outcome as a child in education, that determines your attainment, is how much your parents earn. That is the material reality. So when we talk about, you know, government talk about equity for all and all children being able to thrive, they have to recognise that dealing with the crisis in child poverty and taking really bold action is vitally important. We've been really proud to work together on the issue of free school meals, and we were pleased to see that those free school meals get extended. But the reality is, you know, I'm sat at the minute in Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister's constituency. That's where our head office is. Children in schools around here will be getting, in primary schools, will be getting free school meals thanks to Mayor Khan. In Sunderland, in Liverpool, they're not. And we have to recognise that that is not just at all. We all know that there is the wealth in this society for children to be able to flourish, them having access to foods, they're not having those Victorian illnesses that we saw coming back like scurvy and so on, that they're able to thrive at school is an absolute necessity. So let's keep on raising the alarm about this, and let's make the change that is very much needed, because, you know, we're going to need some bold action. We're going to need some wealth taxes on those who really have the most to distribute to those who don't. And we've got to be really clear. Over half of children in lone parent families are in poverty. Over half of children where a parent is disabled is in poverty. We've got a situation at the minute, even today, if you're nearly half of all children in black families are in poverty. These statistics are to our national shame. It doesn't have to be this way. So let's keep on working together and build a coalition for change, because our children deserve it. We have to remember that because child poverty exists, it leads to an entire wastage of human creativity. We lose doctors, we lose architects, we lose nurses. It leads to an absolute wastage of human creativity, and we can absolutely build a society in which there's better. So thank you very much. I have to go and do some stuff on the white paper now, but take care.
Thanks ever so much, Daniel, for reminding us of those important intersectional links, but also that it's not just about us now, it's about those young people of the future that need to grow up. They are the people that will be the scientists, the politicians, the trade union leaders that will come after us. And we've got to make sure that they're not living in poverty and growing up in poverty, and that they have got enough to eat. And thank you to the NEU for all the support and for the campaign around free school meals, because you're right, it has had some successes, but we've got to build on that further, and that's an integral part of the Commission work too. So thank you, Daniel. We will let you get on, and we'll move swiftly on to our next speaker, who is Mary Williams, the Political Director of Unite the Union. Lovely to meet you, Mary, and you're very welcome. Come on in.
Thank you so much. And it's lovely to see Ian and you, Sarah, and fellow trade union colleagues, and to join, and to all the members who are joining this evening. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to talk about the Right to Food campaign. For this discussion this evening, I'd like to concentrate on food security element of the campaign through a focus on agricultural workers, of which Unite represents thousands across all of our regions and nations. Agricultural workers work all types of land, on types of farms. They plant and harvest our food. And in a time when so much air has been given to the land inheritance tax issue, it is incredibly frustrating that none has been given to the plight of our farm workers. So let's change that this evening. Political choices matter, and the actions from those choices have consequences. And a political choice was made in June 2013 by the then UK Conservative government to abolish the Agricultural Wages Board. Now, the origin of the Agricultural Wages Board goes back to 1909 under Winston Churchill, and was historically linked with national food security and financial support for the agricultural industry. But in 2013, in a single stroke, getting rid of the Agricultural Wages Board made it difficult to negotiate pay and conditions for farm workers across the country. But the Agricultural Wages Board wasn't just about pay and conditions, it also oversaw a career structure within the industry. It ensured a path to achieving qualifications and additional pay, which benefited young people entering the industry as well as farmers. It seems that very few people want a career in agriculture today, so the industry has an aging workforce. There is no incentive for young people to get a job on farming, and the loss of the Wages Board is a factor in that. People are paid the minimum wage with basic conditions without the protections that they had before. And the reinstatement of the Agricultural Wages Board in England is critical for the sector and for the food security of our nation, and it is a political choice. Now, following the abolition of the board in 2013, a choice was made in Cardiff Bay and in Holyrood by the devolved governments of Wales and Scotland. They chose to create agricultural advisory panels, and although not perfect, it was a step in the right direction. In fact, when Wales introduced the Agricultural Sector Act in 2014, which legislated for the creation of the advisory panel, the then Conservative government in Westminster said that they did not have the power under devolution to do this. They went as far as to take the Welsh Labour government to the Supreme Court about its authority to pass this legislation, and lost the case. And again, political choices matter. And I am reminded of something the former First Minister Mark Drakeford said as to why we do what we do and the choices that we make. He said, "We know our duty, our moral obligation, is to run towards the dangers that blight the lives of so many and to never run away from them. We can have a blight on crops. We have the blight of bad employers. There is the unbearable blight of hunger. And we also have the scandalous blight of profiteering, not just within the agricultural sector, but in several other sectors, including retail. The word profiteering means the practice of making or seeking to make excessive or unfair profits. Putting food on the table should never be a struggle, and you can be sure that the CEOs and shareholders of profiteering corporations aren't struggling with that. Workers in the process of getting our food from the plough to the plate cannot be an afterthought in food security, and the creation of an agricultural wages board for England is critical for these critical workers of our economy. It's a decision which our UK Labour government should make. And there's another word that comes to mind, comradeship, meaning to have come through something together, a shared experience, a group with common aims. If ever a comradeship was needed, it is this, the comradeship present here this evening, to ensure that the goals and the aims of the Right to Food campaign becomes a reality. Thank you so much for organising this event this evening and for everything that you're doing, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Thank you so much, Mary, for that important reminder that it's not just the people that are in food processing, it's actually the people that work on the land as well. And they're often forgotten, aren't they? They're hidden away. We've heard stories about seasonal visa workers that are so far out of communities that people don't know that they're being exploited. And we've also spoken a lot around the power of supermarkets and the pressure that they put on supply chains to drive down those prices. But they have unintended consequences of driving workers in the sector, their terms and conditions and pay down too. So thank you for that, Mary.
Thanks, Sarah.
We will move on, and I'm going to bump Mariam up if she's okay with that, because Eddie's not joined us. And yeah, okay, so good. Our next speaker is Mariam Eslamdoust, who's the General Secretary of the TSSA. Mariam, you are very welcome. It's lovely to see you, and please come on in.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, and thanks everyone for being here. Look, ending hunger is something that I chose to write about in my dissertation. I spent months buried in research about the right to food, what it means in law, in economics, in real life, and I keep coming back to the simple truth that in one of the wealthiest countries on earth, nobody should be hungry, not a child, not a worker, not a pensioner. And I want to start by thanking Ian Byrne for and Sarah for campaigning so powerfully on the issue. The Right to Food campaign has pushed a conversation into the mainstream. Sarah and Ian have refused to accept that food banks are a normal feature of modern Britain. That's the kind of persistence that matters. It shifts the terms of the debate. It gives people hope. Since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, food prices have risen sharply across the globe. Wheat exports were disrupted, energy prices spiked, and those price shocks didn't just disappear; they filtered down into supermarket aisles and corner shops. Workers saw their weekly shop jump by 20, 30, sometimes 40%. Meanwhile, wages just didn't keep pace. The people who felt it most were the lowest paid workers, families on benefits, and those already living on the edge. So when the price of bread, pasta, cooking oil, and milk go up, it isn't just an inconvenience, it's a crisis. It means skipping meals, it means parents pretending they're not hungry so their kids can eat. It means turning to food banks and feeling a sense of shame. So what's interesting in many countries in the global south, that they approach this completely differently. In places like Egypt, India, and Iran, staple foods are subsidized by the state. Bread, sugar, cooking oil, basic essentials are kept affordable because governments recognize that social stability and human dignity depend on it. So they're not just luxuries, they're fundamentals. We talk about markets in this country, but markets don't have morals. And if we believe food is a right, then we have to build systems that guarantee it. I'll try and cover the right to food slightly less from a traditional trade union perspective, though of course wages matter, but I want to talk about structural guarantees. So why shouldn't lunch be part of the job? Fully subsidized workplace canteens can be a standard. There is a heavily subsidised canteen in the UK. The Parliament offers parliamentarians very subsidised food. So if elected officials can eat affordably at work, why can't nurses, factory workers, cleaners, delivery drivers? Replicating that model across workplaces would immediately ease pressure on household budgets and improve health. Daniel spoke about free school meals. Absolutely, free school meals should be universal for all children, no questions asked. Yes, in London, we've seen this delivered on a time-limited basis, and it has made a difference. Attendance improves, concentration improves, parents feel a sense of relief, but children don't stop being hungry when a pilot scheme ends or during school holidays. This needs to be permanent. A child's right to a good start in life shouldn't depend on a postcode or a funding cycle. Holiday food vouchers between terms must be guaranteed, because hunger doesn't just take place outside of the summer period. So if we're serious, it can go a lot further. A legal right to food embedded in domestic law, so governments can be held accountable. And I'm talking about publicly owned community kitchens in every town, price caps on staple goods during crisis, support for local cooperatives, protection for people to grow food in shared spaces, expanding community fridges with public funding rather than relying purely on charity, and absolutely explore a universal basic food entitlement, a credit card or a card, or some way of guaranteeing access to nutritious essentials funded through taxation. These ideas are not radical, but what's truly radical is tolerating hunger in a rich society. So it's worth remembering, and I'm going to wrap this up, that there is power in community. It's Ramadan right now, and across the country, mosques will be providing hot food every evening before sunset, offering hot meals to anyone who wants one, not just Muslims, anyone. So I think that spirit shows that it's possible. It's possible to explore these radical ideas. Hunger is not inevitable, it's political, it's structural, and it can be solved. If food is a human right, it must be guaranteed in practice, not just promised in principle. That's the challenge before us, and it's one worth fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Mariam, and you are definitely speaking our language through that contribution. We'll have to have a conversation about the dissertation, because I didn't know that. We'd have had you on board on the commission, I'm sure, had we have known. And we should be taking inspiration from the Global South, because they're doing so much more than we are, and we're not even touching the surface. And canteen subsidies has come up. One of the things that we find when talking to people is lots of workers don't have any access to food at work. They're having to call in, fast food and unhealthy food because the alternative is there isn't any provision. So we've got to look at all of this. And finally, power in community. There absolutely is. And we see that time and time again. It's how we kind of magnify that across all communities, and get people to understand that they can be empowered as well. So thank you so much for that contribution, Mariam. I'll move on to our next speaker, who is Gawain Little, the General Secretary of the General Federation of Trade Unions, another person that I seem to have spent most of the weekend with at various events. You are very welcome, Gawain. Come on in.
Thank you very much, Sarah. The General Federation of Trade Unions is proud to be part of the Right to Food campaign and to be supporting this Right to Food Commission. It's absolutely essential work, and I want to praise the work of Ian Byrne and his office and of the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union in leading on this. It's absolutely crucial. It is a disgrace that 14 million people are going hungry in the world's 6th largest economy. Even more so that we have over 1 million children growing up in poverty, over half of them in families where at least one parent is working. The General Federation of Trade Unions brings together over 500,000 workers across 28 different unions in many different sectors of the economy. And far too many of those workers experience low pay, insecure work and food poverty. And of course, this is the fundamental issue at the heart of this, the mismatch between the wages that our people earn and the price of food. No one should go to work and yet be unable to feed their family, unable to feed their children. And the multinational companies that own the supermarket monopolies should not be able to siphon off super profits while our people are left without food. Redistribution of wealth through the tax and benefit system is absolutely necessary, but it is not the role of the state to subsidise low pay or to subsidise the super profits of the monopolies. We need structural solutions like those that Mariam's just talked about in terms of the provision of food, in terms of caps on the price of food, in terms of subsidy for key essential items of food. But we also need structural solutions to the endemic of low pay right across our economy and the weaknesses in our economy that are right at the heart of what we saw in that cost of living crisis. For far too long, our economy has been weak and unable to respond to external changes and threats like the hike in food prices, the hike in energy prices, because it rests on such an unstable base. We've seen our economy over the last 45 to 50 years restructure to focus primarily on financial services and, of course, the privatised utilities. And whilst that might have generated profits for the few, it's not given us a stable base on which to build an economy that is resilient, where we're able to use those economic levers to protect pay, to protect the standards of working class people. So I believe that we need structural change, which includes structural change in relation to food and how it's treated in our economy, but that also looks at how we raise pay across the economy, proper collective bargaining rights, the right to strike fully returned to workers, and of course insourcing of outsourced work. Those three things would make the biggest change in terms of the pay of ordinary working people in order to support them to be able to access that right to food, to be able to feed their families. And of course, fundamentally, we need to rebuild our economy, which means reindustrialization, but it also means, as Mary said earlier, it also means investing in food production in this economy. That reindustrialization of our economy needs to go hand in hand with food security and food sufficiency within our own economy, so that we're less dependent on imported foods and that we are looking at production within Britain as well. And of course, as part of that, reintroducing an agricultural wages board so that we're paying decent wages to those workers who produce our food. So we're really pleased to be part of this commission. We would urge every worker, every person in your family, in your community to take part in the commission, take part in these citizens' assemblies, help us build a proper solution from the people that we generate as workers in our communities. For too long, we've waited for politicians to solve things for us. No offence, Ian, but now what we want is politicians like Ian who are going out and saying, no, you will be the solution. We will listen to people in local communities, listen to them in their trade unions, and together through this commission, we can build the solutions that we need to restructure our economy to give food security to all and an end to food poverty. Thanks.
Thanks ever so much, Gawain. And the link between terms and conditions at work and workplace, collective bargaining, etc., is absolutely vital through this. And I know the GFTU, as well as ourselves and others on the call, are involved in the call for an Employment Rights Bill 2, so that we can finish the job and fill in the gaps that the Employment Rights Act has left behind. So thank you for that. And yes, structural solutions are definitely needed and part of the discussions that we're having in the commission. We will move swiftly on. Eddie, thank you for coming and joining us this evening. Our next speaker is Eddie Dempsey, the General Secretary of the RMT. And Eddie, I will pass over to you. I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm just happy to say that the RMT will be fully in support of this. Many of our members who work in transport are low paid. We often see when we're on strike, the media only ever wants to talk about some of our members who have managed to hold on to some semblance of moderate pay through the strength of their union over many years. But a lot of our members are not well paid. A lot of our members are outsourced, who are on the bottom of the pile, if you like, in terms of wage income, conditions at work. And we've seen many of our members struggling through a number of disputes, and many of our members having to use food banks and all the rest of it. We've seen food inflation soar over the past few years. I think during the National Railway disputes, at one point food inflation almost hit 20%, and it's often tracked higher than some of the inflation benchmarks that are used. So I'm really encouraged to see that one of the things the Commission is looking at is getting some answers from government on how they look at food inflation when they're calculating their approach to wages in the economy broadly. But the simple facts of the matter are that the share of wealth that's gone to people in terms of wages has almost collapsed against the share of wealth created in this country that goes in the form of profits. And if you look over the past multiple number of years, right the way through the pandemic, in fact, right the way through the credit crunch too, you will see that corporate profits have been rising and rising. There's barely been a year where we've not had record corporate profits. At the same time, over that period, wages have been stagnant or falling. And when you look more granular at wages in the economy, even when wages have managed to half stabilise, if you dig into the details, you find there's an extreme inequality in wage distribution there too. So what you find is more and more people are falling down and falling below, and some people are getting a bit more of it. But that means most people who work in the economy now are struggling, and lots of families, I think it's a crazy number, like 1 in 10 people at the moment or more are living in a household with food insecurity. And I know what that's like. I remember how it was when I was a kid. We weren't a wealthy family, and I'm one of those kids who knows what it's like to go to school hungry. You can't concentrate, you're embarrassed, you can't focus on your studies. I know how that feels, and I saw that around a lot of the people I grew up with. It's an embarrassing thing, first of all. It drives social exclusion, and it doesn't lead to good outcomes for kids as a whole. And over the past number of years, we've also seen massive changes in how food is produced. I think I just picked up on Gawain touching on that, but we've seen the food market in Britain globalised over the past 40 years. And one of the reasons we saw such a massive spike in food inflation in 2023, 2024 was a result of the shocks to the global supply chains, first of all from the pandemic, and second of all then from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That caused untold problems across the supply chains, and as a result, that drove prices through the roof. But it's not the whole of the story. The simple fact of the matter is, many of the producers of food, the multinational producers of food, I'm not talking about the retailers, they're working at very tight margins, but a lot of the multinationals use those moments to price gouge and drive up prices in accordance with the market. We saw the same thing happen in energy. One of the reasons why the energy prices went so high was not just because of the costs of energy, it was because the private companies who own our energy infrastructure use that moment to drive costs up in order to capture more profits. And so far, governments have only ever wanted to tinker around the issue. We're looking at the minute, Rachel Reeves has come up with some ideas around what she can do to ease some of the burdens of food imports into Britain. But the fact of the matter is, we haven't got a functioning production of food in Britain, and that needs looking at, because that could be a source of employment, it could be a source of improving the economy overall. And the food production industry in Britain, agriculture, is not productive, and it hasn't been for many, many years, because in part it's relied on cheap seasonal labour from abroad, super exploited labour from some of the Eastern European countries in particular, in much the same way you see in the warehouse distribution centres. People are brought in for a number of months on poverty wages and then sent home again when their seasonal labour is over. And the result of that cheap labour has meant a collapse in employment in domestic labour, but also a lack of investment in productivity. There's no investment in productivity in many sectors of our economy because of the reliance on cheap labour and other means. And as a result, our industries are not productive. And it comes down to the ownership question in one sense too, because if we don't own our industries and we don't own our wealth producing processes here in Britain, then foreign capitalists will. And if they do, as they do now, then our country will be at the mercy of every breeze that ruffles the world's money markets, as was said by someone before. That's what we saw in 2023. And that's what we're susceptible to again, unless we do a couple of things. We've got to bring pressure to bear on the political process to look at this question. It can't be the case that people who are in work have to rely on benefits and have to rely on food banks to make ends meet. That basically is a subsidy for more profits for the corporations and big employers that we work for. And it also means that the government has got to look about what we do, the structure of our economy and rebuilding our economy here, not relying totally on global supply chains. I'm not saying that we can't import things, of course we should. And we all want to have, you know, the wide range of food that's available to us now. I'm not suggesting we go back to the 50s and live off boiled beetroots and everything else. But we have got to have a semblance of a industry native to this country that provides employment, that's got investment in it. And that means we are not entirely dependent on overseas imports into Britain, that we can actually produce stuff here and give people jobs and provide the food that people need. But I want to see some immediate measures, and I'm really interested to see what comes out of these commissions. We'll be encouraging our members to participate and more broadly our members and their families to participate, because we know how hard it is out there. But I'll be really interested to see what comes back in some of these assemblies and some of these contributions from members of the public, because I suspect the problem is far worse even than many people are giving account of now. I think it's a lot worse. And we have to have serious steps taken to resolve this, because we can't carry on the way that we're going, whereby the cream of our national wealth is taken and sent overseas by multinational corporations. Their taxes are avoided, and the rest of us are left to tighten our belts and try to muddle through, because we're constantly told that if we tax the rich or we take any steps to try to address the imbalance of wealth distribution or asset distribution in Britain, then the billionaires will leave. And I think that's a dangerous way of looking at things, because we've only got to see the way that the super elite behave. And I'm not going to go too deep into recent revelations, but unless we do something about this, we are more and more empowering a smaller and smaller clique of ultra wealthy people who are global in their outlook and have got no loyalty or no attachment to nations like the one that we live in. They don't want to contribute to our infrastructure, to the running of our country, to our public services, or anything else. But they expect us to keep the country running on behalf of them so they can carry on making profits without a bas relief to anyone who's actually got to live here. That's not a healthy way to run the place. So I want to see working people and working class people with food in their bellies and a pound note in their pocket. I want to see the government doing a day's work for us instead of tinkering around the edges. And I think the way to get the political pressure onto these people is through this commission, because it will shine a light on these practices and it will shine a light on the problems that we actually face. And number one, chief among them, is the distribution of wealth and the distribution of resources in this country. And I think it's going to shine a light on actually who owns what. And it's about time the actual people in this country owned a bit more of it and were able to enjoy some of the fruits of their labour a bit more than seeing all of the wealth that we create leave this country, go abroad to tax havens, and then see the rest of us going out working hard and not being able to put food on the table for our kids and having to rely on community services, which are brilliant, by the way, not knocking them, but that's a job we shouldn't be doing. It should be simply a matter of fact. If you go out and do a day's work, you should be able to look after your family, you should be able to provide food, and you should have a little bit of the sort of life you should expect in one of the richest economies on the planet. And we shouldn't be having to beg for that either. So this commission's really important. The RMT's fully behind it. I'm behind it. Ian Byrne's a great fella, the work he does. We've supported him for many years and he supported us, including some of the work he's done with the football fans for food banks and all the rest of it. Absolutely inspirational, and we're here behind you and giving you all of our support. Solidarity.
Thank you ever so much for that contribution, Eddie, and for talking about your own experiences, because one of the things that we're hearing is there's such a stigma attached to not being able to feed yourselves and your families that people just don't talk about it. So you're right, the issue is huge, and we're only itching at the tip of the iceberg because people just feel so uncomfortable talking about food and not being able to eat and not being able to feed the kids. And it's not down to them. You know, if you're not paid enough by your employer for the work that you do, it's not your fault that you can't feed your kids, is it? It's the world that we're operating in. So thank you for that, Eddie. And the other thing that you touched on, and one thing that we are seriously worried about in the Bakers Union, is private equity firms and their impact and their hold on the food industry, because they're not putting anything into it, they're just stripping everything out of it, and squeezing the supply chains even further. It's great to have your support, and thank you for joining us this evening. Just before I move on to a video message from Andrea Egan, the General Secretary of UNISON, as she wasn't able to join us tonight, just, thank you again to Arise for helping put on this event tonight, along with the Trade Union Coordinating Group. You can become a supporter of Arise. There'll be plenty of links in the chat. Do look out for updates around the Right to Food Commission. We are accepting donations. It's always a difficult ask, but if your branch has got a bit of money, or your region has, or your union has, please get in contact with us on how you can donate to make sure that we can make the commission as big and as broad as we possibly can. In the coming days, we'll look at doing some sort of crowdfunder as well, so that individuals, even if it's just £1, every little helps, and every little bit adds up to make sure that we can make this as big and as effective as possible. I will hand over now to our video message from Andrea Egan.
Greetings, friends and comrades. I'm Andrea Egan, and I'm the newly elected General Secretary of UNISON, a trade union that delivers public services across the UK. And I'm really sorry I can't be there with you in person, because this is such an important campaign. I do want to pay testament to Ian Byrne in particular, who's worked tirelessly for many years to turn the right to food into a reality. I've seen firsthand, from my experience as a children's social worker, the devastation that hunger causes. Children who are unable to develop or concentrate at school. And as a trade union activist, the indignity experienced by working people being forced to use food banks, the despair, and in some cases the guilt. At UNISON we have our own charity, There For You, which provides emergency support to members to buy food and pay for fuel. And I'm proud we do it. But we know that we can't engage with people about the rights to organise and strike if their most basic needs can't be met. But it shouldn't be necessary. And how has it come to this? It is a moral disgrace that we've hunger in the UK, one of the richest countries in the world. And in the last 45 years, we've seen workers stripped of basic rights and forced to accept low pay in insecure jobs while the rich get richer. That's not a broken economic system. That's the system working just fine for the powerful and the rich. So we need a right to food law, and that's why this campaign is so important. The trade union movement has a fundamental role to play. Hunger is absolutely a trade union issue. We need that stronger union and workplace rights, and they are needed to turn the tide. Too often as a movement, we have each of the unions worked in silos when we should have been working together, and that has to change. Better pay will lift workers out of this poverty trap. So I want to commend the work done by the campaign so far to travel across the UK to map out solutions to systematic food insecurity, and I want to express my support for the campaign. I think it's tremendous to see that the campaign is working on developing specific policy solutions as well as forcing these onto the political agenda. Please let me know any way that I can support. And I'm sorry again that I couldn't speak live to you this evening, but solidarity to everybody involved in this fantastic campaign. And I hope you have a successful meeting. Solidarity.
Thanks to Andrea for that great message. So I can see Ian again. My screen moved about then, apologies. I'm going to bring Ian back in to do some summing up. I've seen him taking notes whilst we've been going through. There's some points to respond to. Ian, good luck with that. I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, can you hear me, Sarah? Yeah,
I
look,
can,
I think it's been quite a powerful session really, with some brilliant contributions from all the representatives of the unions across the board, and some brilliant ideas as well, which obviously we will take on board, because many of the ideas that were floated and some of the examples were what we are looking at. And I think that structural inequality which we see, and which Daniel talked about being a source of national shame, is right. And I think that was reflected by all the speakers tonight. And just a couple of things, you know, in its own, last Friday I got a call from a musician in Liverpool whose friend had fell on hard times and he was struggling. So we shot round with a food parcel for him from the pantries that we run in Liverpool. And he hadn't ate for 4 days. Now, the man was in his early 40s, but he hadn't ate for 4 days because he wanted to feed his kids. And exactly what you said before, how many people are living like that? You know, and that's why this is just so fundamentally important. And, you know, many of the examples which the trade union leaders give us about, you know, within their sectors, you know, what we're actually seeing with people who are in work actually accessing food banks and needing to have that lifeline to stay afloat is just stark, and it brings it home. And, you know, the structural inequalities that are built in at the moment. And it was interesting. He was a CEO of a famous upper notch bakery, shall we say, talking about question time, and, you know, how the welfare bill had ballooned out of all control. And then we suddenly found out that 75% of his workforce are on universal credit because of the wages that he pays. You know, these are the things which we'll be looking at as well. You know, so we're going to leave no stone unturned in what we're attempting to do. But as I said, the idea is a simple one. By June, we'll finish the sessions. We'll get all the evidence in. We'll spend the next 2 to 3 months collating that. And in September, we want the Right to Food roadmap to then build into a huge political campaign ahead of the conferences. And this is not any party. We're getting supported by all different political parties who are supporting what we're trying to do. But the government have got an opportunity here. And I've heard the Prime Minister talk about the spirit of 1945, and, you know, we've all invoked that spirit as well. Well, that's what we feel as those needed here. We need that ambition from a government with the levers of power, with a huge mandate, with a huge majority, to actually utilise what we're going to create as a roadmap and then implement it. You know, and let's change millions and millions of lives for the better. Let's give them kids that have been spoken about tonight and in many of the sessions what we've had already, you know, how that inequality is damaging their life chances, damaging their ability to live their best lives, but also make a huge contribution to society. So I just think this is, as I said before, this is a hugely important moment for us as a country, as a movement, as trade unionists, as socialists. This is an opportunity of a lifetime, I feel, and we must grasp it. So please get involved in any way, shape or form you can. Go onto this website, see if you can set something up in your local community and get involved. Make sure your voices are heard. Make sure your friends, your families, those who you know are struggling, make sure they have a voice in this as well. So the Commission's report, make sure that it captures everybody and everyone's experience, and we make it as powerful as we can as the most effective tool that we've actually got out there. So yeah, let's keep going and let's keep cracking, because unity really is strength and hunger really is a political choice. So let's make sure that the politicians in the place I'm working in now start making the right choices. Solidarity, everyone, and thanks very much for everybody that's contributed tonight. And thank you, Sarah, for your wonderful sharing as ever.
Thanks so much, Ian. And just before we let you go, don't forget, join in with the community services as branches, work with your local trades councils, convene your own community assemblies, gather evidence where you are, run feedback sessions, run fringe meetings at your national conferences, donate if you can from your branch, regionally, nationally, and promote the report when we get it out once it's published in autumn, and develop motions for conferences. We're going to put together some branch meeting templates, and we'll get those launched out after the meeting in the next couple of days, so you don't even have to think about how you need to run it. We've put it all together for you, and we'll get those out to trade unions. But get involved, get your friends involved, get your family involved. You don't have to be a trade union member to do it. If you know somebody that's struggling, get them involved too. The more people that feed in, the richer the commission report and roadmap will be. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for joining tonight. Do subscribe to Arise. Do keep an eye out for more trade union coordinating group work, and see you all again soon.